In a move that has sent shockwaves through the Middle East and beyond, the United States is rushing a third nuclear-powered supercarrier straight into the active war with Iran. The USS George H.W. Bush has just wrapped up final combat readiness drills off the U.S. East Coast and is expected to steam toward the region within days, joining the already deployed USS Gerald R. and USS Abraham Lincoln. This would create an unprecedented three-carrier presence in the middle of an ongoing conflict that began on February 28th with the launch of Operation Epic Fury. This isn't just another routine deployment. It's a massive escalation by the world's most powerful Navy, signaling that America is committed to sustaining and intensifying the war until Iran's military capabilities are decisively degraded. In this video, we're breaking down exactly what's happening, why the U.S. is taking this extraordinary step right now in the middle of active combat, what these three supercarriers bring to the fight, and what it could mean for the future of the war. If you want the full, unfiltered picture of how the U.S. Navy is surging overwhelming force into the active war with Iran, stay with me. This is the most detailed update you'll find anywhere. Let's start with the current situation at sea. Right now, 2 American carrier strike groups are already engaged in combat operations in and around the Arabian Sea and Red Sea as part of Operation Epic Fury. The first is the USS Gerald R. America's newest and most advanced supercarrier. After an extended deployment that was supposed to end months ago, the Ford has been kept on station and recently transited into the Mediterranean and Red Sea, launching strikes and maintaining constant pressure. Its advanced electromagnetic catapults, higher sortie rates, and next-generation systems make it a floating high-tech fortress that Iran has already felt. The second carrier is the battle-tested USS Abraham Lincoln, a Nimitz-class veteran that was redirected from the South China Sea in January 2026. The Lincoln and its escorts have been conducting combat missions in the Arabian Sea, just a short flight away from Iranian coastal defenses. Together, these 2 carriers have already been launching hundreds of combat sorties per day, supporting strikes deep inside Iran and maintaining constant presence over critical shipping lanes like the Strait of Hormuz. But now comes the third, and this is where the war enters a new, much more intense phase. The USS George H.W. Bush, another Nimitz-class supercarrier, has just completed its composite unit training exercise off the Virginia coast. Defense officials and multiple media outlets, including Fox News, USNI News, and Middle East Monitor, confirm the Bush and its strike group are being readied for immediate deployment to the Eastern Mediterranean and beyond. Once it arrives, the U.S. will have 3 nuclear-powered supercarriers, more than 300,000 tons of floating firepower, concentrated in the same combat theater. That hasn't happened in this region in decades. Why is this happening right now, in the middle of an active war? The answer is simple. The opening phase of Operation Epic Fury has already destroyed large parts of Iran's leadership, air defenses, and missile infrastructure. But Tehran is still launching retaliatory missile and drone attacks. To keep up the relentless pace of strikes, maintain air superiority, and prevent any Iranian attempt to close the Strait of Hormuz, the Pentagon is surging a third carrier. This is not about negotiations anymore. Those collapsed the moment the first bombs fell on February 28th. This is about finishing the job with overwhelming, sustained naval air power that doesn't rely on vulnerable land bases. Let's talk about what each of these carriers actually brings to the fight, because these aren't just big ships. They're mobile air bases that are already changing the course of the war. First, the USS Gerald R. Commissioned in 2017, this is the lead ship of the new Ford class and the most technologically advanced carrier ever built. At over 1,106 feet long and displacing more than 100,000 tons, it carries roughly 75 to 90 aircraft, including F-35C Lightning II stealth fighters, FA-18EF Super Hornets, EA-18 F-18G Growler electronic warfare jets, E-2D Hawkeye early warning aircraft, and soon unmanned MQ-25 Stingray refuelers. What makes the Ford truly deadly in this war is its electromagnetic aircraft launch system. Unlike the old steam catapults on Nimitz-class ships, EMALS is gentler on airframes, allows for faster launch rates, and can handle a wider variety of aircraft, including future drones. The Ford's Air Wing is already flying combat missions that overwhelm Iranian air defenses. Stealth F-35s penetrate deep inland, while Super Hornets deliver precision munitions on nuclear sites, missile bases, and naval targets from hundreds of miles offshore. Next up, the USS Abraham Lincoln. This Nimitz-class legend has been in service since 1989, but has undergone extensive upgrades. It carries a similar air wing to the Ford and has proven itself in multiple combat operations. Redirected from the Pacific in January, the Lincoln is already on station in the Arabian Sea with its full strike group, including guided missile cruisers and destroyers armed with Tomahawk cruise missiles. The Lincoln's presence means the U.S. already controls the skies over the Gulf of Oman and can respond instantly to any Iranian moves in the Strait of Hormuz. Now the third piece of the puzzle, the USS George H.W. Bush. Named after the 41st president, this Nimitz-class carrier is one of the most experienced in the fleet. It has conducted numerous deployments to the Middle East and knows the theater intimately. With its air wing of 75-plus aircraft and a full escort of destroyers and cruisers, the Bush brings another 120 to 140 potential daily sorties once it arrives and immediately joins the fight. When all three carriers operate together in the active war, the numbers become staggering. Over 225 combat aircraft ready at any moment. Ability to launch more than 400 to 500 sorties per day if needed. Hundreds of Tomahawk missiles on escort ships. Constant airborne early warning coverage. Unmatched electronic warfare and refueling capability. This level of concentrated naval air power hasn't been seen in the Middle East since the 1991 Gulf War, and even then it wasn't three supercarriers at once in the middle of an ongoing conflict. The strategic implications are enormous and are already being felt on the battlefield. With two carriers already in combat, the U.S. has been able to maintain relentless round-the-clock strikes deep inside Iran while keeping the Strait of Hormuz open despite Tehran's threats. But adding the third carrier turns that strong presence into overwhelming dominance. First, the triple carrier force gives the U.S. the ability to sustain even higher tempo precision strikes across Iran without relying on vulnerable land bases. Iranian ballistic missiles and drones must now face layered defenses from three full carrier strike groups, while American jets hit targets from multiple directions 24/7. Second, it locks down the Strait of Hormuz even more securely, the choke point through which 20% of the world's oil passes. Iran has repeatedly threatened to close it since the war began. Two carriers have already kept the lane open under fire. Three carriers make any attempt to shut it down almost suicidal for the Iranian Navy. Third, it sends an unmistakable message to Tehran. The United States is prepared to continue this war at full intensity for as long as necessary. The arrival of the Bush makes a prolonged, high-intensity campaign against Iran's remaining nuclear sites, missile factories, command centers, and Revolutionary Guard infrastructure not just possible, but sustainable for months without pause. Iran's reaction has been loud but ineffective so far. State media and the Revolutionary Guard have released propaganda videos claiming to have targeted the Lincoln. U.S. Central Command has quickly dismissed every claim as false, releasing clear footage showing both the Ford and Lincoln operating safely, launching combat missions daily, and continuing to dominate the airspace. But the reality is that Iran's anti-access/area denial capabilities are being tested right now. They have Russian and Chinese-designed missiles, fast attack boats, and mines. That's exactly why the U.S. is sending a third carrier, to make sure any Iranian counterattack is met with overwhelming, immediate retaliation. Now let's talk about what this means for the sailors and pilots actually fighting the war. Deploying 3 carriers strains the Navy's resources. The Ford's crew has already been extended far beyond normal rotations. The Lincoln sailors expected to head home months ago. The Bush's crew is being rushed from training straight into combat. But the men and women of the U.S. Navy are professionals. They understand the stakes. Carrier deployments in wartime are grueling. 18-hour days, constant alerts, living in steel boxes for months on end. Yet they do it because their presence is what keeps the pressure on Iran and prevents the war from spreading even further. Looking ahead, several scenarios are now in play because the war is already underway. Best case for the U.S. The visible surge of 3 carriers forces Iran's remaining leadership to sue for peace or accelerates the collapse of organized resistance, ending major combat operations within weeks. Worst case, Iran miscalculates and launches a major counterattack on shipping or U.S. forces, triggering an even larger American response that could degrade Iran's military for a generation. Most likely scenario: a prolonged high-intensity phase where the 3 carriers remain on station for months, methodically dismantling Iranian capabilities while diplomacy or regime change plays out in the background. The Navy has already signaled it will rotate ships to avoid burning out crews, but 3 carriers at once gives them the flexibility to keep the pressure on indefinitely. This deployment also sends a message far beyond Iran. China is watching closely. Beijing has its own designs on Taiwan and the South China Sea. Seeing the U.S. Navy surge 3 supercarriers halfway around the world while already in combat shows that America can still project decisive power when vital interests are at stake. Russia, too, is paying attention, especially as it continues to supply Iran with weapons and intelligence. The bottom line is simple. When the United States decides to send 3 nuclear-powered supercarriers into an active war against a potential adversary, it is not bluffing. It is demonstrating the unmatched ability to control the seas, dominate the skies, and strike with precision anywhere on Earth, right now, in real time. The USS George H.W. Bush is preparing to join the fight. The Ford and Lincoln are already there, launching combat missions every single day. Together, they represent more combat power than most nations' entire air forces. This is American naval supremacy in action, and it is happening right now in March 2026. The coming weeks will be decisive. Will Iran fold under the pressure of 3 carriers, or will the war expand? One thing is certain, with 3 supercarriers already in the fight and a 3rd on the way, the United States has dramatically raised the stakes and shown the world it has the will and the firepower to see this through.